You ever see a room full of people get uncomfortable over a girl solving math too fast? Yeah, me neither. Until that Saturday at the Montgomery Regional Invitational, where one student, just one, finished the test in half the time and got treated like she robbed the place. Her name was Danika Miles, 17, black, wore her hair in tight coils tucked under a simple headband. No prep school uniform, no team jacket, just a plain t-shirt with the word "Focus" ironed across the chest. And man, did she live up to it. The moment she walked into that gym, folks looked right past her. But by the time she walked out, they couldn't stop talking. See, Danika didn't just finish the written portion early. She crushed it. 40 complex math problems in just under 35 minutes, with not a single scratch out or correction mark. The judges? They didn't clap. They didn't ask how she did it. They asked her to stay behind for review. And standing behind that long table of judges, 3 older white men in navy suits, was Dr. Marcus Ellison, head of the Regional Math Council, a man who prided himself on preserving traditional standards, which, if you've been around long enough, you know is usually code for, don't do anything that makes us uncomfortable. But here's the kicker. Danika didn't cheat. She didn't guess. She wasn't fed answers. She simply used a method no one had seen before. A method born not from textbooks, but from a past soaked in pain, structure, and sheer survival. Let me back up a sec. 2 years before that competition, Danika was stationed at Fort Benning, part of the Youth Military Academy outreach, one of those programs nobody talks about unless there's a scandal. She joined when her brother was killed in a drive-by and her mother fell into depression so deep she forgot Danika's birthday. Danika enlisted at 16, not because she wanted to fight, but because she needed somewhere that wouldn't fall apart when she closed her eyes. In the barracks, while others trained for obstacle courses, Danika trained her brain. Hours solving logic grids by flashlight, equations scribbled in the back pages of her MRE manuals, figuring out math as a kind of rescue from everything else. Her instructor, Sergeant Velez, noticed, called her the code breaker, even snuck her old college calculus problems when no one was watching. That's where Danika built her style. Not memorizing formulas, creating shortcuts, finding patterns most adults couldn't even see. So back to that gym. When they asked her to resolve the hardest 3 questions live, she didn't flinch. She walked up to that whiteboard, marker in hand, and rewrote everything. But she didn't write it the way they expected. She used graphs where they used tables. She factored using vertex shifts and imaginary overlays. She cut through the noise like someone who had lived through something sharper. And the crowd? You could hear the shift. One judge leaned in. One student whispered, "Wait, what is she even doing?" And then came twist 1. A quiet voice from the back of the gym. An old man in a folding chair stood up. "That's my method," he said. Dr. Henry Lattimore, retired UCLA math professor. He walked to the front, pointed at Danika's work, and told the crowd, "She's using a proof system I developed in 1987 but never published. And she's adapted it into something faster." Ellison turned pale. The audience murmured. Phones started recording. But Danika? She didn't stop, didn't explain. Just finished the 3rd problem, capped the marker, and stepped back like she'd just returned from war. Ellison cleared his throat, furious. "This style," he said, "is unverified, potentially disruptive to our standards." And Danika finally looked up and said with the calm of someone who'd once slept in mud to escape gunfire, "I didn't come here to follow standards, I came here to solve problems." The gym went quiet. You could hear the squeak of a chair shifting. A single clap rang out, then 2, then 10. But Ellison wasn't done. He paused the competition, declared a review panel, said her methods were under internal investigation and may violate academic policy. And just like that, the scoreboard went blank. Her name, Danika Miles, replaced with a blinking question mark. Her teammates sat frozen. Her mother clutched her purse in disbelief. And Danika? She didn't even blink. Because she'd seen this before. Not in a gym, but in a uniform. Where being excellent didn't mean being accepted. Where standing out meant getting labeled. And that was just the beginning. Because once that scoreboard blinked, the world blinked with it. By the next morning, Danika's name was everywhere. Local reporters called it a math controversy. Online, it was a firestorm. Let Danika solve. Codebreaker girl. Math is not white property. All trending. Some praised her brilliance. Others said she got too confident. But none of that mattered to Danika, because she was about to be dragged into a game that had nothing to do with equations. The school district called for an emergency inquiry. The official reason? Unconventional performance raising academic concerns. But everyone knew what it really was. They didn't like that a young black girl showed up with brilliance they couldn't control. Ellison doubled down on his position. He claimed the method was foreign to standardized expectations and implied she might have accessed advanced material not yet approved for her level. Danika's family lawyer, Ms. Raina Thorne, a former civil rights litigator, called it what it was, academic profiling. And then came the internal hearing. 3 judges. 1 spokesperson from the State Math League, 2 attorneys from the district, a conference room that smelled like old carpet and tension. Danika had to explain her method again, step by step. One of the judges, a retired textbook author, kept interrupting, asking her to restate it in simpler terms. But that's the thing. Danika's work wasn't complicated to be impressive. It was efficient. She saw shortcuts no one taught, because no one ever bothered to teach her anything except how to follow quietly. And then came twist 2. Detective Caleb Reese, who'd been working security that day at the gym, submitted a written statement. He said he observed the entire process, saw no cheating, and even noted that Danika's hands didn't leave the paper once during the test. Whatever she did, he wrote, she did it live, and she did it real. That's when things escalated. Detective Reese was suspended 2 days later, pending review. Anonymous threats showed up in his mailbox. He and his wife had to send their kids to stay with family. Danika was devastated. I didn't ask anyone to fight this battle, she told her mother. Her mom just looked at her and said, you didn't ask, but that doesn't mean they're not watching you now. And boy, they were watching. News vans outside the school, Fox News questioning her attitude, BuzzFeed calling her the next coding prodigy, college professors emailing offers of mentorship. But under all that noise, Danika was still a 17-year-old girl who just wanted to take a damn test without it becoming a courtroom. Then came twist 3. A clip surfaced. One of the students, Braden Carter, runner-up at the competition, had accidentally recorded part of the whiteboard session on his phone. You could hear him whisper, she's doing it backwards, but it still works. That's wild. It went viral, and suddenly, public opinion shifted. Even the mayor, yes, the mayor, released a statement. We should celebrate, not silence, our brightest minds. The governor's office contacted the board, and the board panicked. They offered Danika a compromise. Her score would be reinstated. She could keep the medal, but she'd have to sign an NDA, no interviews, no future public discussion of the case, and a written statement affirming her respect for the adjudication process. Now Danika was in a real bind, because accepting meant finally being recognized, but also being silenced, erased, and refusing meant risking everything, again. She spent that night walking her neighborhood with her old army duffel slung over her shoulder, stopped at a tiny park near the train tracks, sat on the swings like she used to with her brother. That's where twist 4 happened. A woman named Nellie, mid-40s, custodian at the community center, walked over. I watched the whole live stream, she said. My son failed algebra 3 times. But yesterday he saw you solve that equation, and he asked me to buy him a notebook. Danika didn't say anything. She just nodded, because she finally understood. This fight wasn't about medals. It was about representation. So the next day, Danika walked into the boardroom. She looked at the papers they offered, then at the faces around the table, and she said, I won't sign away my story, because I earned it, with every damn step. Dead silence. Then she added, if you need my silence to feel safe, maybe you didn't pass the test. It was over. They didn't reinstate her score that day, but 2 days later, after the governor publicly condemned the board, they caved. Score reinstated, medal awarded, public apology from the State League. Ellison quietly retired. No statement. And yet, Danika didn't stop. 3 days later, she was invited to speak at a tech startup summit in Atlanta. Her speech ended with this line, you tried to grade my worth using your formula, but I changed the equation. The crowd stood. Every single person. Final scene. Danika back in her room. Window cracked open. City noise in the distance. She stares at a blank wall, then draws a single curve with her marker. Underneath it she writes, "They watched me fall. I made it flight." And just as she sets the marker down, her phone buzzes. It's a message from a private account. "We saw what you did. Are you ready for something bigger?" Danika stares at it for a long time. We never see her reply. Fade to black. Your turn now. Was Danika right to refuse the NDA? Should she have exposed the board? Was justice served or delayed? Let's talk in the comments. Was this just about math or something deeper? If this story hit you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because stories like these, they need to be heard.